Okay, great. Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Parent Involvement Committee. Before we get started, my name is Saad Juman. I'm the co-chair of the PIC Committee. This is our agenda tonight, and the first item up on the agenda is honoring the land and territories. So Superintendent Flahat, would you like to go ahead and do that?
Absolutely, it will be my pleasure. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation for sharing their traditional territory.
Thank you so much for that. Next up in the agenda item is the approval of the minutes for our meeting that occurred on November 18th, 2021. So I would like to go ahead and have those minutes approved, and they were previously circulated. Next, Superintendent Flahat, if you'd like to introduce our next speaker, our next guest.
Oh, thank you very much, Saad. I'd like to, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to our director. I don't think he needs any introduction. He's been very, very visible in our community. He's been connecting with families and schools, and of course, our staff. And I want to welcome our Director of Education, Curtis Innes, to give us some greetings on behalf of the Halton District School Board.
Thank you so much, Eamon, and good evening, everyone. It's great to be with the parent group tonight. I just wanted to speak to you very quickly in a couple of minutes about excellence as we think about Black History Month. Excellence means that it's the quality of being outstanding or extremely good. As we reflect on the rich history, contributions, and elevation of our society by people from the African diaspora, one need not look too far or too deeply to see how the excellence of Black people have lifted our society to what we all enjoy today. From contributions to medicine and science, to improving our stoplights and elevators, to the foods we eat, to how food gets to our table, the list of accomplishments of Black people is too vast to mention here. I challenge everyone listening to do your own reading to educate yourself, and you'll be astonished at the significant contributions of people of African descent to our world, past, present, and future. Examples of excellence in the Black community are too numerous to mention here, although one may never realize this by watching the evening news. I would encourage you to read publications such as the Share newspaper, which regularly highlights excellence of doctors, professors, lawyers, teachers, engineers, scientists, and every other discipline one can imagine. Rarely does the excellence we create, we curate, we lead and improve make the news. I find this somewhat disheartening for our young people who are deprived of the richness and the talent that surrounds them. As director, I believe all students are gifted. It is up to us as a board to provide the opportunities and the supports for their giftedness to shine. This is indeed equity. I want every student who identifies as Black during this Black History Month to know that through their giftedness, excellence is imprinted on their DNA. I like what Dr. Martin Luther King said. If you're called to be a street sweeper, sweep the streets even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. You should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause to say, here lived a great street sweeper who did their job well. That's excellence. It's not what you're doing, it's how are we doing it. Know that excellence is already in you. Now let the whole world see it. Happy Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Innes. What great words. Next, I'm going to hand it back over to Superintendent Flahat, who is going to introduce a very esteemed guest that we're extremely privileged and honored to have here this evening. Superintendent Flahat, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Saad. And speaking of Black excellence, it is my honor to welcome the Honorable Jean Augustine with us this evening. Just want to share a little bit about Jean. Jean made history as the first Black woman elected to Canada's Parliament and served from 1993 to 2006. Her tenure included distinguished service as Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Minister of State for Multiculturalism and the Status of Women, Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Deputy Speaker of Parliament. Her legislative successes include the historic Black History Month motion and the groundbreaking famous 5 motion, which authorized the first and still the only statues of Parliamentary Hill depicting women other than Queen Elizabeth. From 2007 to 2015, she served as Ontario's first ever Fairness Commissioner. In 2008, the Jean Augustine Chair in Education, Community, and Diaspora was launched at York University to help advance education, equity, and inclusiveness. Also in her name are the Girls Leadership Academy in Scarborough, a Center for Young Women's Empowerment, and a municipal park in Etobicoke, a secondary school in Brampton, and a multi-purpose complex and district park in Vaughan. A member of the Order of Canada, Order of Ontario, and Commander of the Order of the British Empire, Jean Augustine holds honorary doctorates from the University of McGill, Toronto, York, Windsor, Guelph, Trent, and Ryerson, and is a senior fellow at the Centennial and Massey College, and supports scholarships at George Brown, Centennial, and Humber College. It gives me great honor to welcome Jean here today, someone who I consider a mentor to me and a dear friend. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Jean.
Good evening, and thank you so much for the introduction. And also, having been on a few minutes, I had the pleasure of meeting some of your colleagues online. So I want to begin then by greeting your Director of Education, your trustees, your educators, your parents, and all those who are part of your parent committee here this evening, and who are also members or part of the community of Halton District School Board. I like what you have as a kind of motto or theme that goes around your identification. And it says, learn, grow, inspire together. And I like that, Ayman, because this is what we have to do as community, and this is what we have to do in community. We have to grow together, we have to learn together, and we have to inspire each other. And so my opportunity to say hello to you this evening, to see the faces of your director and your trustees and those individuals who are participating with you, with the school board, in ensuring that we inspire our young people and that we have them grow and we have them learn with an environment that we help to create. You have some community people that I also recognize, some names that I've seen over the years. So I know this topic is not new to a whole lot of people. I see Mr. Dennis Scott there and others who have been, as I usually say, in the field over the years doing the work, ensuring that we understand what it is to build a community, to ensure that our institutions respond to community. And I know Superintendent Iman, it's so nice for me to say that. I don't get a chance to say that. But I have watched you develop young people. I've watched you be part of community in schools and in places where it was so important to be the mentor and the role model of not only staff, but also all the students who pass through, as my grandmother would say, through your hands. And so thank you for the invitation to join the parents tonight. Where does one start? I have about 4 or 5 areas that I want to cover very quickly. And I think I have, 15 to 20 minutes? I thought that was the agreement. I have about 15, 20 minutes, and then I'll answer questions, right? So I want to talk about Black History Month. And I also want to talk about the introduction, how I came about to introduce the motion, and also to look at the educators and the parents' role with educators as we pass the baton to those young people to carry on what we all want in this society. It's also important for me to talk about allies and allyship. When I was coming up, we talked about friends, supporters. Now we've nuanced our vocabulary. We're talking about allies. We have to find allies. And who are the allies? And how can one be an ally, a true ally? And then I would talk a little bit about why it's important for children to feel that they belong in your environment and what you as parents can do as you interact with staff and teachers and the community to make sure that we're building a Canada where diversity and inclusion is really the road ahead for all of us. So to talk about the motion for Black History Month, I was a teacher. I started 1964, before some of you were born, with the Catholic School Board in Toronto. And I was teaching social studies, grade 7, grade 8 social studies. I was hanging out in my spare time with people from Indigenous communities. I was also part of my community. The folks came from Nova Scotia, they came from different parts of Canada. They were African Canadians, several generations deep, and I was an immigrant to this country. At the same time, the social studies program, the modules that I was teaching had nothing in those modules about treaties, about rights, about Indigenous people, about anything, the ownership of the land, and that we were guests on there. Nothing was said in those social studies module. Nothing was said about people of African descent. So there was always that burning sense of curiosity. When did we come? How long have we been coming? How do we have 6 and 8 and 10 generations? And those of us who were new, imprinting on that system. What was happening? What were some of the good things in Canadian society? What were some of the wrongs that occurred? What were some of the experiences? What was happening in the system? And in the 60s, when I came here in 1960, 61, we had no Charter of Rights and Freedom. That didn't come till 1982, when we repatriated our constitution from Britain and we amended it with the Charter of Rights and Freedom. We had no school board and trustees talking to parents or inviting parents into the schools for discussion around curriculum, around community engagement and involvement. We had no Landlord and Tenant Act. We had no human rights code so that one can complain when things around prejudice, as we talked about at the time, prejudice and discrimination happen. And so there were lots of things in the system that needed to be addressed. 1971, Canada stepped out as the first country in the world to say, we are a diverse society. We are a mosaic. We are a multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. And then there were the rest of us who were saying, well, if you're all of this, if we're such a diverse society, if we're such a multicultural society, I need to know about your culture and you need to know about my culture. I need to know your history and you need to know my history. And so there was that impetus led on by all the conversations around the just society, the mosaic that we are, the conversations around who gets admission to Canada. And then the work I was doing, I was doing recently, what regulatory bodies are letting us qualify to be in that arena. And so when the opportunity came, when the government, the minister responsible for multiculturalism was asked by the Ontario Black History Society that Toronto was doing a proclamation about Black History Month. Because you see, Black History Month, it started in the United States in 1926 by someone called Carter G. Woodson. And Black History Month was celebrated and has been celebrated since then. At the same time, those men who worked on the train were bringing back, the porters were bringing back posters, placards, brochures about African Americans. And we were following that. And we wanted to get this imprinted. We wanted schools, we wanted teachers. We wanted, in the entertainment sphere, we wanted that recognition, as we saw. And so when the federal government said, well, we don't do proclamation, I asked, what is it then that I can do if we want this? And, you know, I was told very nonchalant, well, if you want Black History Month, then you'll have to do a motion, a private member's bill. A private member's bill, you work, you get the bill written, you get everything done, and then it's put in a hat. And then there is a draw because other members are also putting in their bills. I had been buying lottery tickets for ages and I never win any. And I thought to do all that work and put it in a hat and expect that it would be drawn, that won't happen. So I said, well, if this, what is the next? And the next was a motion. To do a motion, 305 members of the House at the time had to know what you were doing, what the motion was going to be, because you want a yay from everybody. If there is a no, it gets put down until you come back again some other time. So I had to work all 305 members to let them know what was happening. And remember, I'm doing this now without social media. I couldn't send fact texts around and swamped all three at the time. It meant I was cornering people in the elevator, going at their seat during question period, meeting them in their office, sending my staff with pieces of paper with the motion on it. And the motion had to come down to, if you want, and I was told over and over, Mrs. Augustine, if you want unanimous consent, there must be nothing in that motion that is debatable. Nothing must be debatable. Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. And so after several tries, the motion read that this House take note of the importance of the Black community to the settlement, to the growth, to the development of Canada, the diversity of the Black community in Canada, and the contribution that they're making to Canada, and ask that the House designate February as Black History Month. It's interesting, and I think it's important to say to you parents and educators, that at the time, in the House of Commons, 1995, it was a different House. For the very first time, we had the Bloc Québécois. We had
Jean, it went on mute. Sorry, Jean, we can't hear you. It went on mute.
Click the little red button with the microphone at the bottom of the screen.
okay. Am I okay now?
You're great.
Yes.
The House of Commons at the time had two new political parties, the Reform Party and the Bloc Québécois. The conversation in 1995 was all about debt and deficit. The conversation then was coming out of the North American Free Trade Agreement. So it was all about softwood lumber. It was all about yogurt and ice cream and boneless beef. I had knocked at thousands of doors in Etobicoke Lakeshore. Nobody said, when you get to Ottawa, be sure to vote for boneless beef. At the same time, I'm saying all of this to give you the setting and the mindset and the discussions that were taking place at the time. So here I was coming with an issue, a social justice issue, and not a lot of people were ready for this. And this is why, as parents and as educators, it's important for me to say this, because you know that not everyone is ready for a specific discussion when you bring it forward. Not everyone understands. Not everyone really would take the leadership that is provided. I had several jokes and several things that were done by people to get me off my game. So you want February? Who's going to come for January? Oh, Augustine. You want Black History Month? When are we going to have White History Month? Anything to throw me off my game, but I was determined that I was going to, in that environment, I was going to persist. I was going to forge ahead because I knew how important it was for us to know each other, to recognize each other, to see, as was said earlier by the director, the contribution of people of African descent. That we were here from the 1600s, that the United Empire loyalists brought their slaves, that we had slavery in Canada. At the same time, we had people who persisted and continued to work in the society, that we had all men or young men going into the military to fight for Canada. We had educators. We had people who were making the case for inclusion. And lately, we had folks who were out there ready and willing to stand up to ensure that we educated our young people and that those young people have some understanding. So Black History Month this year, the theme that the federal government has put out is today, celebrating Black history today and in the future. So we just don't pull out Black history and talk about Black people just in the month of February. And then we put the stop back in until next February. You as trustees, you as educators, we have to continue that conversation throughout. You have to make sure that your librarians have the books, because now we have so much that's written. We have so much that's visual at all levels for our children. And they need to know each other, because if they're going to sit beside each other and learn together and play together and grow together and inspire together, they need to know the history of each other. And at that level, we don't want to pull on our children information before they're ready for it, but we answer their questions. And just as you taught them about bullying, just as you taught inclusivity, being respectful to others, understanding things about other people and other culture, it's important that we do this as we talk about the situation of African Canadians. And I think it's important to note that the United Nations have called on all of the nations of the world, the nations and states of the world, about 193, I think, to focus on people of African descent. And they did that because they had some experience when the situation of women was such that the status of women around the world was really difficult. Women were not in the boardrooms of the nations. Women were not making contribution as leaders. There was the United Nations called on the nations of the world to set up in a decade, improve the status of women. And we know the first meeting, 75 to 85, we needed more than a decade. And then they went to another decade, 85 to 95. And if you look around us now and around the world, you'll see that the status of women have been improved. Of the 190 something countries, there were 21 or so that are led by women, either as head of state or as prime minister. That example is used in the decade for people of African descent. The states and countries were all asked to sign on to that decade for people of African descent and to come back in 2024 and report on how they have improved the situation of people of African descent. And so we have 2 more years to go before we report as Canada all the things that we've done to improve the status of people of African descent. And why did the United Nations do that? Ask all 100 and something. Because they had the stats, the statistics, and the research that showed it doesn't matter where people of African descent are found in the world, the situation is the same. The anti-Black racism, the lack, the prejudice and prejudicial and the microaggression and all those things that happen to people of African descent. That the residue of slavery, the colonialism, the Eurocentric world in which they're supposed to fit themselves into, and over and over. And so what you are doing as you address Black History Month 2022, we are connecting that with the United Nations message. At the same time, the United Nations just didn't leave it open. just do the status of, they gave 3 areas: development, the judicial, those things that they had the research around. And so those 3 areas of focus, we have been helped somehow. The world has been helped with the pandemic, which gave us some time to reflect. The killing of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter, that shook our consciousness, that spoke to anti-Black racism. And at the same time, the essential workers. Who are the essential workers? And so we know that the conversation is now around diversity and inclusion. We know that we are a diverse society. Just have to look out at the classroom, look out the door at whatever. You can see the diversity, but it's how we include, And I said to one of the groups I was talking with today, diversity is inviting everybody to the dance. And inclusion is making sure everyone gets to dance. So it's so important for us as parents to recognize your importance in this conversation. Because you see, no one is born with prejudicial or born hating others or discriminating against others. We learn that at home. We learn that from the conversations. We learn that from the remarks that parents make, from who gets invited, who is not invited, who gets included, who is not included. The young people pick that up around you at home. And if you are an ally, that is, you want to make sure that you look at the society and you look at your place in the society and you respect the notions of everything we talk about, then you have to ensure that your teachers, you have to ensure that as parents, you communicate with the teachers. When my kids were in school, I used to send the Black magazines to the teachers so that they would have something. They used to do at the time, I'm not too sure if they're doing it now, teachers, they used to do collage, where they would cut pictures out of different things and put it together. And they would come home with this beautiful collage and not a Black face in the collage. So I would give them, magazines to bring, to add, so that they'd cut out, they'd have something in there to represent themselves. So you have a role to play, parents. You have a role to be advisors, be supporters of the system. You have a role to support the attainment of things for your library. You have a role to ensure that your trustees find the necessary budgets to support activities that will speak to inclusion, that would speak to the recognition of diversity. And lastly, I know this was said by our superintendent, every child belongs in that school. Every child belongs in the education system. Every child is a Halton child, and that you are the parents and you are the community. The Africans had something they said nicely. It takes a village to raise a child. And so you are the village to raise the children. You are the village to be the mentors, the role models, and you have to live by example. You can't expect your children to be whatever if your conversation is negative about the others. That we have to be inclusive, we have to be respectful, and we have to recognize that we all are participants in a society that we're building together. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Jean, and on behalf of the committee, I just wanted to thank you. I know that there might be a couple of questions that people want to ask you. It's always an honor. Every single time I speak to you, you say something else that just connects the dots and continues to inspire, to continue the work, the good work that needs to be done to create the cultures that we're all after. A place where every child walks into the schools, walks into a community, and feels that they are a part of. They are not a visitor in that school.
Mhm.
They belong.
Mhm.
And every person that comes into any part of our country and our city belongs. So again, I want to thank you. I know that we have a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if our director wants to say something as well before I hand it over to questions, as I know that he has to leave for another appointment shortly. But I just wanted to make sure I give him the opportunity to make a comment. Go ahead, Curtis.
Eamon, I do not want to say anything after the Honorable Jean Augustine. I rest my case. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Curtis. Saad, does anyone have any questions for Jean?
I can ask a question as a parent of 4 children in the system currently. How can parents? You gave a lot of great suggestions, and I was making notes as you were talking about giving teachers resources and keeping an eye on the library and those types of things. But in terms of helping to further make inroads in dismantling, let's say, systemic racism that may exist in the education system, what can parents do, in your opinion? Where's sort of the biggest game that we can focus on?
Well, first of all, you have to be present. First of all, you have to, and I don't mean it in a negative sense, but you have to educate yourself on what the issues are, because you cannot speak to the teacher or speak to the issues if you don't know what the issues are. But I think that if you have the conversation, you listen to your children, you listen to what they say about others, just as the conversations that you have around bullying. I'm sure you speak to your kids about that. About either they're bullied or they're being bullied or they know a bully, etc., etc. And you have conversations around that.
Yeah.
The same has to be the conversations about this Black girl, and look at her hair, and whether she has braids or whatever, or where she comes from, or sometimes there are horrible pictures out there that depict Black people, and the kids would make comment. How you deal with your children as you try to explain the world to them. At the same time, you are doing what is right now. You're participating with other parents in trying to make the system responsive and better. There are some things that we need to point out. Sometimes educators don't like that. Oh, and my kids are in the school, and there isn't one teacher who look like my kids. A comment that you make so that the system can realize that they have to do the inclusive, that they have to have diverse educators in the system. Because the whole message of you can't be it if you don't see it. The issue around who is included on the sports team, or who goes on the bus with whoever, who is given, how we speak for others who maybe can speak up for themselves. The issue of parents who want to be engaged with the system, but maybe don't have the language or don't have the time, because they work a couple jobs, and the time when parent meetings and other things are taking place can't be there. Making sure that you call them, like after tonight, should be 1 or 2 parents that you have a discussion about some things that were said, and paying attention to what is coming out from the Ministry of Education by reading the papers, looking at the news, following things that are happening in the system as we move forward. And we now into what I call a global village. We know what's happening in other countries and in other places. And I speak a lot about the education of the girl child, because there are so many places where the education of girls is not given any priority, or where there is difficulty around girls getting into and staying in the system. And you talk about that with your children. So you make a very, you have an open kind of discussion with your parents, and have the teacher know who you are. Sometimes, there are young people who go through school, and the parents have never met the teacher, or if they meet the teacher, is kind of a parent night, goodbye. But make sure that you know. And I still think that the old making the phone call to say, how is Johnny doing? Or something important that's happening in your household that you share with the teacher, share with the class. Because it's important that the self-esteem of our young people. And we have to prepare our kids even before we send them to school, right? What kind of dolls you buy for your child? Blonde, blue-eyed, long hair. A lot of Black kids don't have the long, straight, blonde hair. How do you, with your children, your family, how do you explain these things so it's not a curiosity?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jean. Is there any, we have maybe time for one more question. Any other questions for Jean?
Kelly, ¿qué pasa?
Eamon, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead, please.
Jean, thank you so much for coming out to speak to us and for being such a model of what is possible, because what you have done for us, you have broken ground in such a way, your words really resonated. And you're right, Black History Month is not about just a month. It's the foundation that starts for the year. And we are trying to make sure there are more books in the libraries so that students can see themselves, and that we are making sure that there's more in what is being taught, because it is so important that those students see themselves in what they are learning and who they are learning from. And it is something that our board is really trying to work upon. But I just want to say, you're a hero, because you have done so much and you have made such a difference. And I really, really thank you for that, because you have done, and I know you probably didn't start out to do that, but you know what you have done has made a huge difference. So thank you so much.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's all resilience, the old story, fall on your behind, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep on going. The Halton police has a car. What they call those cars?
Cruiser.
A cruiser. And my message is at the front of the cruiser with my name on it. And one of the things I say all the time, and they drive it all around. So if you look around, maybe one day, Superintendent, I might ask them to drive it through some of your schools. The message actually that I try to put out is really a message that says Black history is not just for Black people. Black history is Canadian history. It's who we are as Canadians, who we are in a society with all the groups, who we are and who we said we are as a multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society, how we understand, respect each other, and how we know each other's history. And African Canadian history is not pleasant history. But at the same time, we've been resilient. We've overcome a lot of the ugly things in the society. And we have so many people, so many people who have, despite all of the struggles, excel, contribute. I mean, look at Curtis Ernest. Look at Mr. Ernest. Hey, top of the hill, right? So we could be there, but what do we need? An opportunity. We need the opportunity. We need the roadmap to help us to get there. And the same with teachers. You have a lot of good teachers in the system, but you have to have that promotional, give them that promotional opportunities to get them to where it is so they could do their best work. Like history is Canadian history.
Well, thank you so much. We are so grateful for your words, Jean, and I know that we've kept you late, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time. You're more than welcome to stick around with us, but I know that you got lots on the go. Again, I thank you. I look forward to our continued connection and our friendship, and I'm forever grateful for your words. Always, Jean.
So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you all, and have a great rest of the meeting, and do good things for all of our children.
Thank you, Jean.
Merci. Bye-bye.
And I'd like to hand it back over to Saad and Sherry, our other co-chair, for the rest of our meeting.
Thank you so much. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Sherry. Sherry, you're going to do the next introduction and take us home.
Yes. Hi there. I am Sherry White, just to say hi to everybody here. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties trying to get into the meeting tonight. But next on our agenda, I would like to introduce Dennis Scott. And Dennis is the chair of the Halton Black History Society. And if I can just, the Halton Black History Awareness Society is a passionate group of multiculturals dedicated towards implementing cultural education into the public and institutional mindset towards appreciating the values of inclusivity, equality, and self-development while depleting bullying, prejudice, and inequality on any and all levels. And there is the Halton Black History Awareness Society Student Essay Writing Contest that Dennis is going to give us more information about. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Dennis. You just got to unmute.
Dennis, a little red microphone on the
The
bottom.
little red
there.
button on the bottom.
How's that? Sorry about that. I want to thank Curtis for giving us this opportunity, and Eamon and Joel in regards to helping me follow it through. It's a very exciting program that we have, and that is basically where we're going to have as many secondary school students in Halton do research and narratives on Halton's Black history. I've been in Halton for 24 years. I've gone through some turmoil in regards to being Black and all that kind of stuff, which I might get to later. But I think it's very important for us to appreciate where we are today and where we can go and where we have to go. So I'd like to start off in regards to talking about some statistics. I can talk all day too, but I'm going to keep it down to about 10, 15 minutes at the most, okay? I think I've been given 5 minutes, but we'll all work it out. So, a couple of interesting facts. A Halton Youth Survey reported that elevated psychological distress is reported by 34% of the students. The percentage represented about 341,000 Ontario students. I'm a very positive individual as well, so I'm not slamming anybody, okay? I just want to make that quite clear, okay? Halton has the highest visible minority growth in Canada with a 76% growth over a 5-year period. At the same time, Moulton had 178% visible minority growth. Immigrants would represent between 24.5 and 30% of Canada's population in 2036, compared with 20% in 2011. These would be the highest proportion since 1871. Most of this information is from the census as well. In 2036, among the working age population, 15 to 64 years, between 40% could belong to a visible minority group, compared to 20% in 2011. So that's double. Okay. The Ministry of Education for the Love of Learning stated that schools must be more inclusive and courses must reflect the perspectives and contributions of minority groups. The ministry also says the benefits of learning from and about each other more than justify meeting the challenges of providing an educational system that is sensitive to diversity, which is why this program is so good. We're starting off on a Black basis, okay, because that's what we know best. But the Black in the Halton Black History Awareness Society represents any and every marginalized group. That's number one. So what we're doing and what we're hoping to do is to change cultures every year. We've got all the libraries and museums in Halton working with us. We're working towards developing a journal on an annual basis with the best stories involved. We're also working with Metroland Media, who will use a QR code for the opportunity of anybody going in and reading as many of the narratives that we select as possible. The winner, there'll be 3 winners. The number 1 winner will be interviewed and excerpts will be put in the newspapers throughout Halton. The museums and libraries have requested that some of the students go and make personal presentations on their narratives. And as I mentioned, they're going to put a journal together with us in regards to talking about various cultural histories in the Halton area. Now, I just want to mention a couple of things. Just one second. Halton history, our mission is the education, bringing awareness to and promoting Canadian Black history towards progressive, inclusive future through the vehicles of art, music, theater, literature, spoken word, educational, historical, genealogical, and mentoring forums, and community collaboration. As our symbol, we have the African Sankofa bird, which means you have to look back in order to look forward, which again is relevant in regards to this narrative program. I also like the cliche that says, you don't know what you know until, or you don't know what you don't know until you find out what it's all about. And this is what our intention is. And I'll give you a little background here. I come from a place called Owen Sound. I didn't realize until I was asked to look after the festival that I wasn't taught my Black history. So in taking on this responsibility, I did research and found out that Owen Sound was the last terminal of the Underground Railroad, that 10% of the population was Black at the turn of the 18th century, that my aunt was the first nursing graduate, Black nursing graduate in Canada. Another aunt was the first deaconess of the BME Church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of history. There's a place called Priceville where the community tried to keep the knowledge of Blacks ever living there from being acknowledged. There's an old Negro Creek Road, and an aunt at 82 years old took out a petition across Canada, which enabled them to keep the name instead of changing it to Scottish and Irish. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. Okay. Within Halton, within the last 2 years, one of my board of directors who goes to the University of Waterloo came to me and said, "Dennis, is this professor who's using the N-word." And I said, what are you doing about it? He said, "This is what we've done, but nothing has changed." And it's really amazing that just after that, I saw in two newspaper articles that there was a professor that used the N-word and nothing was being done about it. And I'll be candid as well. I took my daughter out of high school here in Halton and put her into another school because she was biased against, and there's just no way. And when the principal said, "You should not be down in the bus stop with all your brown friends," okay, and that's what determined me to take her out of there. And she graduated with honors in another school and worked on to be quite a good professional. So it's really important. I'm going to tell you one other story too. We taught grade 5s 1 year, even to the point of opening the book and looking at the N-word and telling them what the N-word was all about. They were all astonished, okay? And they wrote after the presentation little memos to myself and my wife in regards to the fact that they got so much out of it, they didn't know what that meant, and they'll never do it again, and so on and so forth, which, light bulb wise, told us we have to teach our children as young as possible in regards to what diversity is. And in doing so, we can turn things around. So this is a start in regards to this narrative program, okay? We're going to continue this on an edition every year, and we're also looking at further educational tools that the teachers can use in regards to optimizing their education in regards to diversity. I think another point is important. My background, I am from 8 cultures, okay? My grandchildren are from 12 different cultures. A couple of those cultures being Indigenous, Jewish, Jamaican, Costa Rican, British, English, French, and it goes on, right? So I'm fairly diversified, and I grew up in as Jean said, a environment where the community looked after the child. And that was even to a point where my aunt, who was recognized as the best elementary school teacher in Guelph upon her passing about 10 years ago, took me to a basketball game that she was playing in when I was about 5 years old. And I walked out and I thought it was Night of the Living Dead, because everybody in the city, it seemed, were out there looking for me. And that's what it takes. It takes all of us working together in regards to educating our kids, looking after our kids, and being honest with our kids, being positive with them, and showing them progressive means in regards to how they can optimize their lives. It can be done. I'm going to be pushing until the end of my life in regards to it being done. And I need your help in regards to doing so. So in leaving things, I think, and it was a question asked of Jean, what can we do as parents? What we can do as parents is introduce our youth to diversified environments. That's 1. 2, educate them in regards to the situation. For instance, the Nazi flags up in Ottawa and the likes of that, unfortunately, there are young people seeing this. And if something isn't done about it, they're going to think it's okay. Okay? So we have to nip the problem in the bud when we see it, and all the time, okay? And we have to move together and individually towards progression and equality. And until we do that, we're going to have the same conversation in 10 years from now. And as Jean and I were talking before we came online, we've been doing this for 400 years, okay? And I'm speaking, if you look at the Black history and the atrocities, I guarantee that every culture, every civilization has gone through something similar. So there's no reason for us not to get together to make things better. And if you just ask a simple question, is it better to be negative or is it better to be positive and progressive? It's better to be positive and progressive. And if we do that, we can succeed. So we've got a big job ahead of us. I'm prepared to work with you, and I'm glad you're working with me. We have a great team. My team is multicultural. Some are Holocaust victims, some are with mixed marriages, some are with single parenthoods, some are biracial and have difficulties on both sides of the fence, etc. Okay, so we've walked the talk. Okay, we're quite prepared to talk in regards to educating, especially our youth, which will transfer right up to adults. And there are many atrocities here in Halton, adult-wise, as there are student-wise. So we really have to really pull it together and do the job that is expected of us. As I mentioned to Jean just before we opened up here, unless we work together, and that's cultures working within themselves better and best, okay, we will not succeed. So now is the time to go positive and progressively in regards to our educational opportunities, in regards to making that change effective now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dennis. We really
Thank you.
appreciate your time. And Dennis, we thank you for putting forward the opportunity for our secondary students. And I'm sure now that parents are watching, they're going to be on the lookout for, potentially encouraging their children in secondary schools to write that essay contest, because I think there's some awards, and it's going to be my honor to be one of the judges. I thank you for asking us. And of course, our human rights officer, Dr. Jewel Amol, will also be another judge with Dennis on the essay writing contest. So again, thank you very much for being with us here tonight. And I'm going to hand it back to Sherry to engage us in the rest of the agenda. Thank you again, Dennis. If you're more than welcome to stay with us, but we understand if you have other responsibilities this evening. We're grateful to you for being with us this evening.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And continued
Thank you.
successes.
Thank you.
Sorry, you do
Okay.
have to leave. So enjoy the evening, enjoy the month. And
We
I
appreciate
should
it.
point
Thank
out
you so
too,
much.
We should be promoting our cultures all through the year rather than on a monthly basis and so on and so forth. We all know that. So let's do it. Let's have fun enjoying and celebrating in regards to the festival. And I should mention one last thing. We're very proud that Burlington has been acknowledged as the first city in the world to acclaim August as Emancipation Month. And that's through our organization and, of course, the Halton community as well. So thank you very much and have a good evening.
Well, and Dennis, before you go, just so you know, the director has started a speaking series. So the first panel discussion was this past Monday evening, and it was based on anti-Semitism, but there is another one coming up it is on Black excellence, and I don't have the date in front of me. Does anybody, would any of our, Eamon, do you know what the date of the next one is? Because I know it's coming up February.
I think they're setting that all up right now, Sherry, and they're designing it. So Dr. Jewel Amol is helping to set that up.
I think the date has gone out, but we will make sure that we send you the link, because that is something that was also like live streamed, so people could participate as well. So.
Well, I appreciate it. I spoke on excellence last week. It's on YouTube. Just check my name and excellence, and you'll see us in a group speaking on excellence in the Black community. Okay. There's another point I had to make, but I forgot. So it must be time to go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Thank you so much. And Next up on the agenda is for the our conference committee to discuss the upcoming virtual conference that we were looking to do in May.
Well, I think that we were going to engage in a conversation with the committee because there hasn't really been anything decided. And just folks that are here today, perhaps we could talk a little bit about that. We would, I certainly would welcome working and supporting. We do have money set aside. I wanted people to know that. And we were thinking about doing some kind of a virtual conference in May, but no decision has been made. And we thought we would get into a discussion about that and just generate some ideas. I think Zaina's on the line as well, and others are on the line. This is an opportunity for us here as a committee to engage in conversation about that. And what would we want it to look like? Who would we want to speak? Is there a theme that we would want as a committee for a parent conference? Or is it a full day or a half day? Is it a panel discussion? Is it a conference where we can do, we can work with people to engage? And we're hoping to do that in terms of a discussion. So I'll hand it to you, Sherry, to start up the dialogue. Maybe perhaps people want to comment on that.
Well, I think one of the things that we would need to discuss as well, and you might be able to answer this because you've gotten a lot of the pro-grant applications back from the schools that have applied. And because some of the feedback I've been hearing from some of the parents is that because of not being able to do things in person, obviously there's so many things that are online right now. And even with the individual schools doing their parent engagement, they are, doing a lot of these virtual speakers and things. And some people are getting a little sort of, as one parent said, zoomed out. It just seems to be a lot. So, I mean, if it were panel and it were more engaging like this, rather than something very passive of people, listening to a speaker. But I just think if you were to look at some of the pro-grant applications, and if all of these different parent councils are having this speaker on this night and this speaker on that night, that by the time a weekend in May comes, they're going to be like, I don't want to sit in front of a computer screen to, have another speaker that way. So if it were going to be something, either, if there was a way that we could in literally have more engagement, even virtually, or to have something more interactive, I think it would be beneficial. But I don't know how much engagement we would get just from some of the feedback that I've been getting. I can see in the chat that Zena had put in, she was just wondering how much money, and I know that Ally wants to say something. So Ally, if you want to turn your mic on, you don't necessarily have to have your camera on, but if you want to say what you need to say, please go ahead.
Great, thank you. Great presentation, by the way, from both guests. I just wanted to caveat that if you hear a little human being crying in the background or grabbing my hand, I'm parenting alone tonight, as my wife has the other son at basketball. So the question I have is, I've been very excited and enthusiastic about joining the PIC committee, especially this year because of the PIC conference. Last year, we had a lengthy meeting where we actually talked about the PIC conference for this year. And one of the suggestions that was brought up, and it was actually myself that brought it up, was doing a series of PIC virtual conferences with each PIC conference focusing on one of the 5 pillars presented by ACSD. That way, parents get to know that we have 5 pillars, and parents get to see and pick and choose which pillar they want to attend. As you can see, I'm super excited about that as well. So, the follow-on question to that is, what happened to that discussion, and why are we now in February discussing what we should be doing? So a few questions, but I just wanted to Thanks, Gary.
So if I may, Sherry, Ally, thank you very much. It's a beautiful idea. I'm sorry that I wasn't privy to that conversation last year. I'm happy to engage in that this evening in terms of is that something we want to do as a committee? Do we want to have a series, or do we want to have potentially a day where we can engage parents around those themes? So the idea is that we have a keynote speaker, break up into workshops, people go for a break, come back afterwards, another keynote speaker, and then more workshops, but they're all geared towards the five priorities of our board. And that's an incredible idea. And if that was discussed before, certainly that's something that can be easily put into motion as a way for us as a group to engage in that. And if we decided that it was going to be in May, then it's quite a bit of time to plan that and invite speakers and whatnot. But again, I'll hand that back to others. I think Zaina, you had a question as well, and I believe that Sherry, you had asked me to respond about something, and I'll do that in my report afterwards with regards to program.
And I think even just, to answer, Ally, for what you've asked, because of this whole pandemic thing, it really what had been discussed before was all this ideas of what happens if, there was a lot of, we didn't know what was going to happen, if these restrictions would be in place, if we could lift things or not. Obviously the transition with, John retiring and Eamon, you coming on board, there's not everything got transferred that way, so you wouldn't necessarily know all of the things that were discussed, but it was just that idea of, could we do even like a hybrid model? Could we do something, within the different regions of the board as well? And I think it's still difficult to answer those questions because we still don't know from sometimes one day to the next, or, or if we plan for something now, is it still going to look the same in May? Because it could change. But I think if we do go ahead, I would like to see, because again, sometimes some parents aren't available on the weekend days, or, was that idea of, could we do something, if we split it up, would we be able to do something during the week, something on the weekend? Or if it were to be recorded and like live streamed, would parents be able to, maybe if they couldn't be live there to see the keynote speaker, would it be something that would be able to be recorded and be replayed? And again, that for some speakers, I know they allow access to their presentations afterwards, and some don't necessarily want that to be a permanent recording. So it would be
Sorry,
something
Sherry,
to find out about.
Yeah, I wonder if we should hear from some of the others on here. I certainly don't want this to be a two-way dialogue. Is there any other thoughts on some of this work moving forward? I'll put that out to the group, to the committee. Any other comments or feedback around conference planning? I don't think that an in-person is something that we can plan for at this time. So we're looking at a virtual, and Ally mentioned the theme that was talked about last year. That's still very doable, and we don't need to steer away from those ideas. We have 5 priorities as a board, and we could certainly use those as the theme for our conference as well.
Eamon, if I could speak through the chair, Sherry, thank you. I just want to say that it's, to me, not a bad thing to be planning an online conference. I've experienced increased attendance at online events. It's easier for people. And I think it allows people to, plan better if they know that they can plug into different sessions online. It's just it's less burdensome. They can be in their own households. Possibly taking, as we see tonight, possibly with Las Risas taking care of children, but plugging in and getting some of the messaging through the presentation. So I don't think it's all that bad to plan forward. We haven't done this as a PIC committee. I don't believe we've done an online conference yet. So this could be breaking new ground. Who knows? We may adopt this as our future path. That's my thoughts anyway.
Any other thoughts?
Zena, did you have a question?
Hi, everyone.
Sorry, you're on mute, Zena.
Zena, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. How are you guys? How is everything? I'm sorry, I was just listening from my side. I'm not deciding yet what's going on and if the May will be visible with this short notice, especially with the speakers. And we don't know, we are not sure if the speaker will be available with this short notice. But by the way, Ayman, do you know how much we have money that we can spend with this conference, if you don't mind?
Yes, we put aside approximately between, depending on our continuation with the work with Pro Grant, which I'll speak to later, but we have between $10,000 and $12,000, and there might be some more available funds if needed for the conference. As you know, conferences, usually the big costs are around venues and around the lunch that usually happens with when there is such a thing. So it's quite a bit of money to put aside for a virtual conference, certainly for speakers. And we do have access to a little bit more in terms of the funds that are available. So there is significant money, 10 to 12,000 and perhaps another 2 to 3,000 for the conference if need be for the speakers. And as far as timing, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to put together an incredible list of speakers. We're quite resourceful in many ways. We have our own staff at the board, and there are many speakers out there that we have good connections with people out there if this is what the will of the group wants.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Yeah, because, I think this is the gold stone that we have to think how much money, how we can spend it. What is the speaker availability, especially nowadays, everyone is online and everyone is doing speaker virtually. So, and plus we have to think that the program is already distributed. So the school will be more busy to look for speakers. So the speaker will be a shortage. So this is only my thinking and my brainstorm. Maybe you can go from there and maybe we can think about it maybe with another meeting, or if you want to decide a specific meeting only for the conference, I think it will be a good idea. That's from my end. Thank you.
Well, if the group thinks it's a good idea, we could certainly strike up a committee to meet aside, or we can invite whoever wants to come. And I'm happy to engage in conversation and support because I do want to help creating a successful conference. I think, sorry, Sherry, I think somebody else has a question. Louisa?
May I speak now? Is that okay? Yes? Okay. I was just going to offer some of my thoughts, if that's okay with everyone. I think a virtual conference would be a good idea. Maybe something to consider before we get there would be, I think, Sherry, you had mentioned this, is those proposals and grants came in, and just to see what people are doing so we don't repeat maybe the same thing, so that we can offer something a bit different. What I find that works virtually is offering choices. So a mixture between a live stream and discussions after. So some people don't mind to go into a live discussion after they've heard a specific topic or a guest speaker. I also find what works is sending messages to, I don't know if we could do that, but sending a very quick message to families and saying, what would you prefer? Here's the dates, what time? And we could base on that as well and themes. And so sending that out maybe preliminary and see what the need is out there. I think that was, yeah. Oh, and then just having different times. When we reached out to families, it's interesting because it's quite diverse in availability. So we had some families that loved the time between as soon as students would get home, interesting enough. So from 3 to 5 was one of the very populars, and then after 7. But I mean, that's just in a different community, so it could be different throughout Halton. So, and I do love the idea of setting another meeting for further discussion. Thank you.
Well, that's great. And one of the things we discussed with the chairs a while ago was that the next few meetings, and this is something we have our next few, I think 2 more executive committee meetings such as this. And so we invited a speaker tonight, invited a few speakers tonight. So the thought was, at every one of these, the rest of these for the rest of the year, inviting people that are really making a difference in our communities, bringing them and inviting speakers to come to our meetings here and engaging with us and engaging with our community that are with us. So this is one of the conversations that's happening. And so the hope is that we could set up other speakers as well to come. As you could see, Jean was a very powerful speaker this evening, certainly made an impact on me and many others, I'm sure, with her words. And I've seen lots of conferences, and there are some people that really do have an impact on us and our well-being and our inspiration and our resilience. And so I think that that's something that we're looking into for sure, to try to bring that about into our own committee here as well.
Jen, did you have a comment as well? No? Okay. Sorry. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you. I love the idea of having the virtual conferences, and my only thought was, let's make sure we tape them, because not everybody can attend in live, so that then they can capture them later. Because I mean, like today, Jean was amazing. Her words were so inspiring, and just the history behind what she's done and what the difference she's made. And I mean, other people will watch that and it will really hit home with them. So when we have a speaker who has great knowledge, or even words of wisdom to share, if we can make sure that's captured so that we can make sure that that is shared even later, that gives everybody that opportunity, even if they can't attend, because you're never going to find that perfect time.
Great.
Absolutely. And I think that's always, even when we had the live conferences, there were sometimes we wanted to make sure we had permissions to, video some of the breakout sessions and things like that, because when you're even looking at that list of like, oh, I can only choose one from this column and one from this column, and there's one that I can't make it to, so I want to be able to see it after. So it would just be a matter of making sure, like I said, there are some speakers, depending on who they are, how much you pay them for, that will like you don't mind if you keep a recording of it. So like I said, it would just be to coordinate, obviously, like, as Zena said, yes, there are a lot of speakers right now that are quite popular and are being, brought into a lot of different schools and things. So we don't want to repeat any of those. But on the flip side, being that it is virtual and we don't have to bring people in or pay their transportation costs either, there might actually be more availability for some speakers to be able to do a virtual workshop on whichever day we choose, because there aren't the restrictions around traveling to one of the schools in Halton or something to do that. So
Okay.
definitely it would just be, I think going forward, and maybe it does need a breakout committee too, to just see, do we pull the parents to say, weeknight, weekend, what time slots would work better, or, that type of engagement. And would it be something like being able to do something live and interactive, or just have, listening to a speaker speak.
Okay.
And yes, and obviously, I mean, just building in the breaks, people have to have their own food and stuff. Thankfully, we don't have to figure out the catering and things this year. But yeah, because that was always a big part of planning these conferences too, was trying to sort out all the
Okay.
extra stuff.
So can we perhaps send out, Joanne and I will send out a message to the group here, because there are some that weren't with us this evening as well. They might be watching live, but we'll send out a message to ask if anyone is interested in being part of a meeting, and so that we can talk a little bit more about the conference, because I'm seeing that people do want something. How that's designed and what that looks like, we could certainly work together on that. I know some people are very passionate about doing such things like the conferences. And I know some people even joined PIC because they want to make a difference and they want to help make an impact through, putting together parent conferences. So we'll send out a message, and we'll certainly engage and start working on moving that narrative forward. Sherry, sorry, I'll hand it back to you for the rest of the agenda. I'm just looking at the time. And
I was also just going to, when you just mentioned now about people watching it live, I can't have too many windows open here at the same time or I lose my internet. But I know that there was a form in case anybody was putting questions to show up in the live stream. Do you have access?
I have access to the form. I have access to the form. Unfortunately, there didn't, not too many questions came in around those pieces at all.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything there that might have come in and somebody's waiting for an answer and it's not there.
No, thanks for that. Yeah.
But if nobody's asked anything, then that's good. Okay, so there are some committee updates. Zena, do you want to give your report? Sure, switch your camera off. Zena, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Okay.
Okay. Do you want to give your reports from
yes,
the committees
I will do
you're
my
on?
report very fast because I know that the time is already running out. So we are just behind that. So it is very simply, I attending the environmental meeting, the environmental management team committee meeting. I attended twice from the last PIC meeting that it held in December. So the only one important things that we have here in the Hilton region, we have the Hilton Garden Week, which will be running on February 24 to February 27. I don't know if I can try share the screen. Let me see. I will try to share what I have. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen? Is it available? Please confirm, anyone?
Yes, it's there. We can see it.
You can see it.
Okay, perfect. So this is the Hilton Green Garden Week. So it will be running from February 24th to February 27. This is the link. I can put it on the chat. It is open for the public. Everyone can register and can attend to that one. The registration will be through the Eventbrite. And this is everyday schedule that will be available. Also keep in mind that most of these workshops, it will be recorded, so you can see it online, or you can see it afterward as a record. So there will be multiple, from yoga to the healing mother with indigenous plant. There will be how the like gardening, blooming. So I think this will be a fantastic week of workshops, so everyone can attend for that one. My other update is that the Halton District School Board, they are running programs through some of the schools, not all the school, it is only some of the schools, to using the LOMI. Can you see my other screen?
Okay.
Yeah. So the LOMI is transferring all your leftover from food, from ground, from any old pet case, anything, to the composite that you can use in the gardening. So this is, I think it is very nice and a huge part that you can transfer your garbage to a benefit for the environment. And this is something that we can think about the eco-friendly environment, because nowadays, I think this is the most important topics. Other than that, I think I don't have anything to share from my end. Sherry, it's for you. But any question before that? Sorry. No?
Well, you just said you
Okay.
would put the link in the chat, and we
Yes.
can make sure that those slides get put into the
Yes.
minutes if you want to forward them to either me, or like, I guess
Yes.
if you want to even send
For
them to
sure.
Joanne, she'll put.
Okay. Now the
Mhm.
workshop registration, it is already in the chat. You
Okay,
can see
great.
it.
Yeah.
Also, I can put the LOMI machine, just in case if you want to have a look, especially for the parents, because this is something important, especially for the Hilton region, that we are going through eco-friendly environment. This is important. Oh, I forget one point I want to share with you. Sorry, Sherry, and sorry, Ayman, if
Go
I
ahead.
just did it. So the most important, Ayman and Tanya was with me in the last meeting of the EMT, and they talk about the secondary school student and how they don't have the ideas, or not the ideas, or maybe they are just don't use how we can recycle, how we can put the some of the things in the green bin, some of the things in the garbage. So this is something very important that and I like from here to give the voice and the message to all the parents who are listening now or who are listening later, as long as it is recorded. Please advise your kids who are in the secondary school to use it in the way that it is supposed to be. Not the garbage in the green bin, not the green bin in the garbage, not the recycle in the garbage. So please, if we can help each other, this is very helpful matter. Also, please remind your kids, and especially in the secondary school, don't put any leftover in their cabinet, in their desk, and everywhere, because this is will be contaminated. And we don't. I think we have to think about the others. Do you like your kids to smell or to have any unscented breathing, that they can go through the hallway in the school? So please advise your kids so that your kids is safe and the others is protected. Thank you from my end. Sherry, it is yours.
Thank you, Zena. I appreciate that. Okay, quick update. I will just do this very quickly, and I will, I know I sent the sort of the slide deck that we were given the other night, but the committees I'm on, one includes OPICA, the Ontario Parent Involvement Committee Association, and we met 2 weeks ago, and one of the things that had come up was that the ministry usually meets with them like 4 times a year. Obviously, due to the pandemic, they haven't been meeting as regularly. And one of the comments that was brought forth was that the ministry had said, because this is an election year, and end of April, beginning of May. That is when usually nominations are in, campaigning will start. Usually any public consultations and things that are going to come from the ministry are going to be sort of put on hold. But at the same time, it was discussed that maybe because it is an election year, that OPICA was thinking of in the spring putting together a town hall style meeting to see what the different political parties' views are on education in this province going forward. And it was just interesting that we discussed that a week before the ministry did put, we had a meeting the other night, that they are looking to get input from parents and stakeholders to see if they're going to be making changes to the secondary school graduation requirements, changing that sort of, what credits are required to graduate, looking at the course types and pathways, and with curriculum reviews, how often, what subjects, what should they be looking at when it comes to making those changes to the curriculum. So there was a meeting the other night, and so they are doing some sort of information gathering on that. We weren't able to get any direct answers to it. I mean, they asked a lot of questions of us, but a lot of questions the ministry representatives weren't necessarily able to answer. But they did stress that some of these proposed changes had been sort of been under discussion for the last 2 years. So it may or may not be something when it comes to the credit system that we may see a change before the election in the fall. So those things are under discussion. They did say that within the next 3 or 4 weeks, there may be a new statement being released. So we will definitely be keeping an eye out for that. And I'll be able to share the slide document with the minutes for this meeting, that you'll see what the ministry presented. And now I will ask, did Jean disappear? Jean disappeared. So Kelly, do you have a trustee update for us?
Yes, really quick because we're really late. We just passed the school year calendar. So anybody, you can look now to see when school will start for the 2022-23 school year. You can see where all the PA days and the different breaks are. So it has been passed. We're just waiting for the official from the government, but I believe that we were based it on their recommendation, so it shouldn't be a problem. We also are starting our budget process. It is going to be a very difficult year. We are going to be looking at another deficit budget, so it's going to be very tough. And we'll be looking for community input sometime very soon, and you'll be able to do that through the website. And the last thing is we've got approval for some new schools. We got a new school, elementary school in Milton, and a new elementary school in Northeast Oakville, and the high school in Northeast Oakville is also moving along. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Milton seems to keep growing. And Eamon, over to you for a superintendent update as well as the programs. And you're on mute now.
Thank you, Sherry. Just have a very brief update as I'm looking at the time. We're certainly behind schedule, but I just wanted to let everybody know that we had, for the programs, we had 71 applications that came forward. Each school that applied was given will be given $750 to spend for their projects. And the important thing is that they must submit a report of the expenditure. So they've been allocated the $750, but the school will not get the $750 or up to $750. Whatever the expenditure is, up to $750, they will submit that form. There's information has been sent and will be sent again, so that the information comes back by June, and the online report is due on June 1st. And it's not overly complex. It's just basically reporting on whatever people applied. If they said they were going to bring speakers in, they're to submit that information. It's quite, they've made it into a very simple process. And then the school would get the money for it. So that's a very important thing. And the issue is that we can't, if people don't submit that by the deadline, we can't in the fall, in September, get receipts and whatnot and expect that the money will be submitted to the school. Simply because if we don't use the monies that were allocated to us, they do go back to the ministry, and we're not able to give schools money after that date. The other thing that I wanted to say, that most of the projects, indeed, just like people mentioned here tonight, they're focused on a lot of presentations, lots of people bringing great speakers in to their schools, which is great. Some communities got together, and they're each going to be allocated their amount, but they're getting together and they're bringing in, whether it's multiple speakers or one very effective speaker, impactful, and they've joined together to do that. So I think there was about 25 schools or so that made that decision to collaborate with others. I'm going to stop there because at this point, I think that, the piece around reporting is very important, and I just want to make sure that people know that. And I want to thank everybody for your support in terms of supporting this committee and, of course, supporting the work that goes on in our communities. And I want to thank our trustees and everybody for being with us this evening. And that's it for my part. Sherry, I'll hand that back to you. Sorry, we have a question.
Yeah, sorry. So I was just wondering, there are some schools that weren't able to, because of the shutdown right after Christmas and all that hadn't able to apply for the program grant. So are you taking late submissions?
So just so you know, the deadline, when we had that deadline sent out, some schools, so we had about 30 schools that were late, and we accepted all of them. Everyone that reached out to say we were going to be late, we accepted every single submission. And there is no one else that we've reached out. No one else has submitted anything. So right now, like I said, there was initially there was about 40 some odd applications. And because of the extensions that we gave, we were very flexible. Anyone that reached out to us, principals reached out, said they needed a little bit more time. We supported them. At this point right now, I think that, we've allocated what was available. We've given people enough time to, because they were planning too, and they were meeting and doing things. And we sent out messages that anyone else that wanted to send this to us, and they have. So at this point, I think we're where we are in terms of the approvals, and I think we'll stop there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you. I'll hand that back to you, Sherry.
Okay, so we do have a date for the next committee meeting, which is March 31st. Eamon, I'd like to propose, though, that maybe between Saud and myself, with you, we might discuss if we do need to put a subcommittee together or something to discuss the conference. And because we might need to speak again before the 31st of March, if we do want to plan something for May. But we can figure that one out. Does anybody else that's here tonight have any other questions, comments, concerns? Well, it is a little bit late, but I would like to say it is, what is the exact time? Oh, 8:51. Then I will call an adjournment to the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we will see you next time.